Ladies and gentlemen, with the advent of the Custom Gear Unequipped pack, I'm sure that many of you have already bought one or are thinking of it and just want to see the revamped tiers and rankings for the top 10 characters, the best characters for each of the 10 most popular CTPs. Well, that's what we're here for. This is the July ranking of the top 10 best characters for each CTP. Standard PSA that goes along with all of these videos. This is just my opinion, so you're more than welcome to disagree with me and build characters however you want, and you should build characters however you want because it is your account and you want to have fun. Also, we are never ranking the CTPs of Transcendence or Patience. They are known as like the butt cheeks CTPs, so we just leave them there. We also don't rank them. We also don't talk about the CTP of Veteran because it is so rare and so few players have it. I also will make note when it is important and when it is necessary which time I'm talking about only the reforged CTPs versus when I just refer to the CTP. If I just refer to the CTP, like if I say the CTP of Judgment is really good, then you can start with a baseline one. But if we always start by saying the reforged Greed, the reforged Refinement, or reforged Egg, then that always means that you have to start at a Mighty or start at a Brilliant. Without further ado, let's dive into the CTP of Insight, which honestly has not changed very much. We've gotten very few new support characters. The only real important one is Dazzler. So you could argue that Dazzler should be in this top 10 here, but the top 10 is actually so dense. There's so many very strong supports. I think maybe the only one that deserves questionable downgrade is maybe Taskmaster, but there's just so many really valuable supports. There's a bit of overlap with certain supports like Enchantress and Mysterio, both servicing villains, but otherwise this list is absolutely solid, and Dazzler is really the only one that you should consider putting into your top 10 personally. And then of course with the CTP of Insight, it's very good if it's reforged. It doesn't have to be reforged, but just keep in mind that if you do reforge an Insight, you want the increasing damage to boss types for PvE content, in particular ABL. And then you want that second line that decreases additional pierce damage received for all PvP content, Timeline Battle, Otherworld Battle, and Conquest. So for that, especially for that second one, you want to prioritize giving any Mighty or Brilliant CTPs you might have to the two most important PvP characters that are going to cover you as supports for the vast majority of content in PvP land, and that is Wasp and Colossus, right? Colossus bringing the damage reduction and Wasp bringing the debuff cleanse. Moving along to the reforged CTP of Greed, always aiming for that ambush proc. We have a lot of new players here, so I do want to highlight their rankings. Wolverine remains #1 with the new uniform, but there is a lot of evidence to suggest that the X of Death's Wolverine is actually better for PvP, but I'm just going to use the most recent icon here. Just keep in mind that the old uniform may be a little bit better for PvP action. We have Deadpool making his way here. I actually downgraded Sentry because he's just so overwhelmingly good with Conquest that I think most players are going for Conquest. Greed is still a very good pick. It's just a little bit less tanky. We also have newcomers here with Mr. Fantastic and Doom. Doom is very bad offensively and defensively, but at least if you give him a reforged Greed, he's a little bit better offensively, but still is a paper bag on defense. And then Mr. Fantastic, you could go for a reforged Greed-based build for the full Fantastic Four team if you had Franklin, and you were going for just a glass cannon offensive team that relies on that immortality. I also downgraded Jean because her presence in PvP has shrunk considerably, and so because of that, she's no longer a top 7 pick for the Greed in general. Moving along to the reforged Refinement, aka the Egg CTP. This one honestly has lost a lot of value, more than most of the other PvP CTPs in my opinion. I still think it's an attractive options for sort of like the lesser tier of characters. That's why you don't see the very best PvP options here besides Silver Surfer, but mainly for the Reflect type characters. So I think Reflect gains a lot from the Refinement because it adds so much HP and it adds so much healing. Keep in mind the Vitality proc also gives you access to Super Guard Break immunity, which is so important for fending off Sentry, that little bitch. So yeah, the list otherwise is pretty much unchanged. The Judgment CTP remains amazing for elemental damage characters. However, we haven't gotten very many elemental damage characters. So because of that, the top 10 list looks very similar to 2 months or even 4 months ago. Really only Human Torch making his claim here in the top 10, securing the top 7 position. Now, Human Torch is not the most necessary tier 4, I would say, or not the most valuable tier 4 in terms of the content that he can clear that other characters can't clear. But in terms of damage, he is one of the best tier 4s in the game. His damage output for World Boss is insane. He absolutely shreds content, very much like Miles Morales. So it's only fair and only makes sense that they would be ranked side by side. The Reforged Authority CTP coming in mighty and brilliant varieties. You always want to aim for that steal effect with the damage reduction, and you always want to aim for the highest possible amount, whether it's 30% or 60%. This list looks a little bit different in the bottom half, but the top half is essentially the same. Keep in mind that when you're going for authority-based builds, you're going for more of a stalling, defensive-minded character, so you won't be able to pull off as many one-shots or as many, high damage bursts, but you will be able to stretch out fights and last longer, and that's sort of the key here, and that's why you see a lot of immortality characters, a lot of revive characters, etc. Some newcomers, we do have Dr. Doom, which we're still hoping that he can maybe get a buff. Who knows? He probably should be ranked at the bottom there below Rachel, but it is what it is. Quicksilver, very, very good defensively when you pair his Giga Dodge with an Authority, especially a Brilliant, much like Spider-Man. So you can see those characters as very, very similar in their design and their makeup. And then Invisible Woman. This is not necessarily the best build for her, but it really depends on what you're trying to get out of your Fantastic Four team. So I do want to highlight that. We put Mr. Fantastic on the Greed build if you want to go full offense for that team. If you have Franklin, even if you do have Franklin, you have his artifact, you may want to go for a more defensive team, in which case you want to give most of those members, especially Reed and Sue, an authority. But you sort of want to maybe mix and match or keep them all the same. So I did want to highlight each one of them on these two different CTPs so we can cover our bases. The Reforged Destruction CTP, you always want to aim for that strike proc to increase damage to bosses. This is less and less a hybrid CTP, but I do have to highlight a couple of characters, and in this case Invisible Woman, that it actually can be a bit of a hybrid for. Now, Invisible Woman does have penetration, so you don't have to worry too much about that, but she's just so easy to play, so proc friendly, and so strong in PvE content that it's almost tempting to say use a destruction on her and then get whatever value in PvP you can get out of her if you have Franklin's artifact. That's pretty much all that's changed for the destruction. You can argue a little bit of value has been entered here for the new Deadpool and Wolverine uniforms because they're proc friendly, but there are better hybrid options as we'll talk about. But I sort of see destruction as sort of a very PvE focused hybrid CTP. It's got a little tiny bit of PvP value with the guard break immunity and the strike proc giving you 100% ignore dodge, but it's not really enough to really call it a true hybrid CTP. CTP of Energy has seen quite a few new faces that can utilize it very, very well. You have a lot of the old staples here, but I'm going to enter both Deadpool and Wolverine into this ranking. Wolverine strictly for PvE, but potentially also as a striker for ABX ABL. His fifth skill is the skill that he uses as a tier 4 striker, which can be very powerful, do a lot of damage, add a lot of hits, rack up a lot of score. So it's possible that Wolverine may compete with either Thor or Black Widow or Ghost Rider for best tier 4 striker, in which case an energy can be super valuable for ABX specifically. And then also Wolverine's super proc friendly, so it can actually be used on him with the new uniform. As for Deadpool, sort of like Adam's build where you're just trying to one-shot with that second skill, Deadpool can utilize a mighty or brilliant energy with the all attack, all defense role, and then just basically burst down opponents. Unlike Adam, he doesn't have access to guard break immunity natively, so that does hurt his consistency a bit more than it hurts Adam's consistency, but it's still good for getting off a lot of damage in a hurry, and it still allows Deadpool to be a bit of a hybrid character by still performing good in world boss content. The Reforged CTP of Regen has not seen very many changes at all. I was sort of hoping that the penetration success chance would see a resurgence of value for Otherworld Battle, but that kind of doesn't seem to be the case. So really the only change here is adding in Franklin as a sort of defensive option. If you're going to field a full Fantastic Four team, you could give, Valeria and Franklin, or Franklin and Thing, a regen with a high penetration chance, and then hope that that allows and gives Reed and Sue more time to deal damage and more interruptions available to stall out so that you don't trigger the artifact too soon, the Franklin artifact for the immortality buff. Otherwise, the regen list remains the same. The Rage CTP has seen a bit of a shakeup here since the last time we talked about it. Scarlet Witch enters the top 3 here as an absolutely fantastic pick for a CTP of Rage. Insane value at tier 380 and tier 4 for ABX and ABL. She does a wonderful, wonderful job, and she's not bad, as we discussed in our comparison video with Ghost Rider. Not bad at all for other PvE content. We've taken Dr. Octopus out of the list because Hulk has maintained his value, and we've added in Wolverine just because he actually has a lot of value, being able to score 15 million plus in ABX and 10 million plus in ABL, which is nothing to, shy away from. So absolutely want to highlight him there. It's a bit of a shame we don't have more variety featuring 2 combat heroes and 1 combat character. There are a couple of other characters you could consider for this ranking of top 10 for the Rage CTP. I did have to take out Black Bolt as well, but I do think this represents things quite well in the current scene of the meta for ABX and ABL. And last but not least, we come to the Reforged CTP of Conquest, the hottest, most popular CTP for PvP these days. Try to get your hands on a couple of these, smash them together, and cross your fingers for a brilliant, because this thing is OP. Now, recently, they've added the CTP of Conquest as drops for the 28-day check-in box and other boxes, so you actually can get your hands on this now, even if you do not spend any money on Marvel Future Fight. So you do want to listen up here for the top 10 list, and it looks as follows. The top 3 remain the same, with Sentry, Silver Surfer, and Thanos being so strong with it, but Wolverine and Deadpool round out the top 5 there. Deadpool probably needs a brilliant version with the highest possible clash and wall rolls to really give him enough defenses and enough offenses to deal damage. And then Mr. Fantastic makes an appearance there if your blood is rich enough, so to speak, or if you are really trying to push the ultimate Fantastic Four team. I think both Sue and Reed can take advantage of a Conquest if you have a very stacked build for them. You have Franklin's artifacts, 5 or 6 stars, etc. I know it's a lot to ask, but hey, if that's what you're going for, that is the best way to do it, and that is why they're on the top 10. So that ranks out, and that wraps up the list there for the top 10 best characters for each of the top 10 best CTPs in the game right now. Hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of the list. Smash the like button if you enjoyed the content, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.